So, a 17 years old female recently found out on Monday that the place I've been working at for the past 3 weeks is haunted. At first, I thought my coworkers and boss were joking, but they seemed genuinely convinced it's true. They shared personal stories about doors slamming open and things turning on by themselves. However, I was still hesitant to believe them. I've never experienced anything paranormal, nor have I been somewhere that's actually haunted. I thought maybe they were just overthinking things. I really didn't believe the place was haunted. Anyway, I was talking to a coworker today about it, and she was very passionate about the spirit's existence, as she apparently has seen ghosts all her life. She specifically mentioned a ghost cat that haunts the place, a black fluffy cat that likes to knock things around, just like a living cat would. Shortly after she described what the cat does, she briefly left the room. During this time, I was alone in the back, and I heard something clatter and fall over in the dish room. When I went to investigate, I saw that one of the knives was on the ground in the corner. Initially, I thought that the knife had slipped down the crack where we usually wedge them, handle up, to dry. However, that didn't make sense because the handle is too thick to slip down that crack. Only the blade fits, so it couldn't have just fallen through. It also takes a bit of effort to unwedge them. Not a lot, but some movement is required to remove it from its drying spot. The only explanation I can possibly and rationally think of is that it got knocked out and fell. I was freaked out, not gonna lie, especially given that multiple people have seen this ghost cat and it supposedly likes to move and knock things over. Later in the day, a jar lid was flipped off the counter, inexplicably, and my cup, which I had placed in the center of my phone, was shifted noticeably out of place. When I asked my coworkers if they bumped it, they said they didn't touch it. While I was alone washing dishes, I also heard one of the fridges open and close. But when I looked, nobody was in the back with me. All my coworkers were busy in the front. I also didn't hear anybody walk by or come up the small staircase we have. The owner is moving the business, and my coworkers and boss think the construction and moving are disturbing the ghosts and making them more active. They all say the ghosts aren't malicious, but I can't help but feel more paranoid now. Like, I'm working in a haunted cafe. I got so nervous about the apparent old man spirit in the back room that my coworkers have seen that every time I went in there, I said out loud that I was coming in peace and just had to put a dirty rag in the laundry bin. I hope that doesn't trigger him to mess with me, LOL. I'm going to try to be very respectful now in their space, and I hope they don't get more active because of my nervousness or anything. But yeah, I think I interacted with a ghost cat today. I want to start by admitting that I don't know much about the paranormal. While I believe there might be something out there and have even participated in a couple of ghost tours, I've never experienced anything that truly scared me until recently. My job in home health care has always brought me into close contact with people in the twilight of their lives, often in their own homes. It's a job that requires patience, empathy, and an ability to handle whatever comes your way. But nothing could have prepared me for what I've been dealing with lately. I work the overnight shift, and I was recently assigned to a newly remodeled 3-bedroom house. It's a quiet place, just one resident and me during those long, silent nights. The first night on the job, I felt uneasy, a sensation I chalked up to the normal anxiety of being in an unfamiliar place. However, as the night wore on, that uneasiness began to morph into something more tangible, something that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. It was around 4 a.m., the time when the world seems to hold its breath, that the power went out without warning. The house was plunged into a deep, oppressive darkness, the kind that seems to swallow up even the smallest hint of light. My unease quickly escalated into outright fear. I could feel my pulse quicken as I sat there, trying to calm myself, when I suddenly heard a door slam at the back of the house. It was a sharp, definitive sound, not the kind of creak or rattle you might expect from an old home settling into the night. I jumped up, adrenaline pumping, and scanned the area with my flashlight, but everything was in place. No door was out of the ordinary. My nerves were shot, but I forced myself to write it off as just another quirk of the house, maybe a draft, or the house reacting to the sudden loss of power. The week that followed passed without any major incidents, but the feeling of discomfort never left me. It clung to me, especially when I had to approach the hallway leading to the bathroom at the back of the house. The hallway itself was ordinary enough, but the sense of dread it evoked in me was overwhelming. It was as if the air in that part of the house was thicker, heavier, making it hard to breathe. I found myself avoiding it unless absolutely necessary, taking the long way around just to steer clear of that oppressive space. By the end of the week, I was so on edge that I decided to sleep on the living room couch instead of the designated rest area. I kept a few lights on and played YouTube videos in the background, hoping the familiar sounds would provide some comfort. But even these precautions couldn't shield me from what was to come. Every time I tried to sleep in that house, I was plagued by vivid, unsettling nightmares. These weren't the typical dreams where you wake up slightly unsettled but can shrug them off. No, these dreams were different. They felt disturbingly real, as if I were awake and living through them. In these nightmares, I would often find myself lying on the couch, just as I was in reality. I could feel the rough fabric beneath me, hear the faint hum of the lights, and yet something was always off. There were whispers, soft at first, but growing louder, more insistent. I could sense figures standing over me, their presence dark and malevolent. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, my stomach churning with nausea and anxiety. It was as if the house itself was seeping into my subconscious, turning my sleep into a twisted reflection of my growing fear. Last night was the worst yet. The dream began as usual, with me waking up on the couch to the sound of whispers. But this time, the voices were clearer, and they seemed to be calling me, urging me to get up and walk down that dreaded hallway. Despite every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I found myself standing, my feet moving of their own accord. The hallway stretched out before me, longer and darker than it should have been, the shadows almost alive. At the end of the hall, a dim light flickered, revealing a figure slumped in a rocking chair. As I approached, the figure came into focus, a body, twisted and decayed, its head lolling to one side. Its eyes were empty sockets, but I could feel them on me, following my every move. It was smiling, a grotesque, knowing smile, and as I drew closer, it began to whisper. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was one of mockery, of malicious glee. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. The closer I got, the louder the whispers became, until they were a deafening roar in my ears. I woke up with a jolt, shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. For a moment, I could still hear the whispers, faint but unmistakable, echoing through the room. I was too shaken to move, too terrified to even reach for my phone to check the time. It felt like hours before I could convince myself that it was just a dream. But even then, the fear lingered, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. Desperate for some sort of explanation, I confided in a coworker about these experiences. Her response only added to my growing unease. She revealed that the two previous occupants of the bedrooms had passed away last year, and that she occasionally hears strange noises and sees cabinets opening on their own. Her words confirmed what I had been dreading, that there was something very wrong with this house. These nightmares, the strange noises, the power outages, they only happen here, in this house. I've never experienced anything like this before, not in any of the other places I've worked. Each shift now fills me with dread, a sinking feeling in my stomach that I can't shake. I find myself looking over my shoulder constantly, jumping at the slightest sound. The power outages and strange noises have become a regular occurrence, almost like a twisted routine. I'm hesitant to share these experiences with others. Out of fear, they might think I'm losing my grip on reality. After all, who would believe that a house could be haunted, that the dead could linger and torment the living? But the fear is real, and it's consuming me. I'm terrified of going back, of facing another night in that house. I just needed to share this with someone, to get it off my chest before the fear drives me to the edge. I worked in the radiology department in a hospital in Cardiff, Wales, UK, for about 3 years as an admin and clerical officer before getting a promotion in medicine. During these 3 years, I saw a lot of things, ranging from patients dying in MRI scanners to patients having an X-ray for inserting a meat thermometer into their urethra. Nights always seemed the craziest. One time, a patient came in with armed police after an altercation which involved a knife in the middle of the city center, and just so happened that the person he had the altercation with was having an X-ray too. This caused a second altercation right in front of me. Chairs were thrown, a trash bin or two, and then a wheelchair. So, I have seen things, some funny, some stressful, some sad, and many bonkers. But this one night, something scary. I would start a night shift, about 19 up, or then would work till 8:30 the next morning. This was the standard night shift for our department. We would usually do 3 nights in a row before doing 4 days off. After the third night, you were ready to sleep for a week. The strange thing was, this was my first night of the 3, so not at all tired. It started off normal. I arrived at the department, took over from the day staff, logged into my PC. During this time, we usually would set up our phones or tablets to watch movies or the latest TV series, as there would be a lot of downtime between patients. Like I said, the first few hours, nothing that interesting, just your average run-of-the-mill night in radiology. Then it came to my break. Now, before I tell you more, I should probably explain the layout of this hospital. This hospital is the largest in Wales. It's a teaching hospital, and it's pretty old. Now, the best way to get from A to B in this hospital is through what we call the tunnels, or the catacombs. These consist of very dimly lit corridors, old abandoned rooms, tunnels, and other creepy decrepit areas. The morgue is also found in these corridors, so it's not a nice place to be during the day, let alone the middle of the night. But it's the quickest way to get places if you're staff. There have always been rumors and mumblings of strange things happening in these tunnels. Some people say they saw ghosts in old-fashioned porter uniforms, taking wheelchairs to pick up patients. Others say they have seen shadows following them from the corner of their eyes. But one person has claimed they were attacked by a person wearing an old nurse's uniform from the 70s. This place is creepy, even at the best of times. But for me, it never really fazed me. I've been down there hundreds of times before the worst experience up to this point was having a sluice pipe drip human waste on my head. That in itself was a horror show. But tonight would be something altogether different, and maybe not even of this physical world. Like I said before, a very quiet night. I had been watching the latest series of One Piece because I'm a geek. During my downtime, a radiographer or radiology technician for my American friends out there came to take over and cover me for my break. I decided to go to the 5th floor where the Sanctuary Multi-Faith Chapel was located. On a night shift, it was one of the most peaceful places in the hospital. But to get there, I had to walk through the tunnels to reach the nearest elevator. I set off on my journey, which would usually take about 15 minutes, scanned my key card on the main entrance to the tunnels, then proceeded to walk through. 2 minutes in, I started to feel like someone was walking behind me. It being a busy hospital, and basically the tunnels acted like the highway, I didn't think anything of it. Suddenly, I heard panting, like someone was trying to catch their breath after going for an intense run. So I turned around to check and saw nothing. A bit strange, but thought it was nothing. Maybe just one of the pipes above my head creaking or a generator pumping. So I carried on walking, but I kept feeling like someone or something was watching me and was walking behind me. Out of sheer confusion and fear, I missed my turn towards the elevators and found myself in a large section of the tunnels that I have never been before, littered with old stretchers, beds, hospital furniture, and equipment. Some of this stuff was over 50 years old, maybe older, just left to decay in a dark, smelly, decrepit, and dusty corridor. This was starting to really creep me out, because in all of this confusion, I realized I was lost. It almost felt like I had fallen into the back rooms. Everything looked the same. I could feel a tightening in my chest and could feel the start of a panic attack. I remember clutching my chest and running down a corridor trying to find a signpost or something to tell me where I was. The sense that something was watching me got stronger. Suddenly, I felt something hit my arm with force, almost like someone using a baseball bat. I remember falling to the ground, pulled myself across the floor towards the cold, dusty wall, and looked around frantically, trying to find an explanation for what the heck just hit me. Then something caught my eye. It was almost like a black mist with glowing red eyes. It was about 20 meters away from me, just hovering in the middle of the corridor. Was this the thing that had been stalking me the entire time? I got back up and sprinted. I ran down what it felt like 100 different corridors until I found a housekeeper, janitor. He asked me what was wrong because I looked pale, but I couldn't get any words out. He then grabbed me by the arms with a firm grip and said, "Did you see it too?" That was the last time I ever stepped foot in the tunnels. To this day, I hear rumors of strange things. I'm not sure what I saw that night. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe it was something. Why else would the janitor ask me if I had seen it too? What else is down there? Well, I can tell you one thing for sure. I won't be going to find out